Ever since human beings learned to manipulate ore from rocks and turn it into metal, the hammer and forge of the smith has been integral to the progression of technology. Heat, beat, and repeat. And though the steel used to create the Battleship North Carolina prior to World War II wasn't rendered in the old-fashioned way, parts of it are finding their way into the forge again in order to create new, functional art that serves as an homage to both the ship itself and to the sailors that served on its missions. After being decommissioned in 1947, the Navy couldn't decide exactly what to do with the vessel, and she seemed bound for the scrap heap. North Carolinian James Craig campaigned to save the ship and have it moored permanently across the Cape Fear River from downtown Wilmington. Over $300,000 was raised to prepare the site, tow the ship to its mooring, and prepare it for use as a tourist destination. After 60 years sitting on the muddy bottom of the river, the ship was determined to require repairs to portions of its hull.
To repair the Battleship North Carolina's hull, the USS North Carolina Battleship Commission and staff established the Generations Campaign. The Generations Campaign mission was to raise funds to construct a cofferdam, to conduct hull repairs, to build a walkway around the ship, and to fund educational programs.
The battleship had already offered old sections of teak decking for sale to artisans that might be able to recycle it for practical or ornamental purposes. And now they were looking at a significant amount of scrap steel that could either head for the junkyard or be repurposed.
And we were given this recapitalization authorization from the Naval Sea Systems Command. And as such, when we started cutting steel out of the hull in 2012, and now at a much higher level during our ongoing hull repair project, we find ourselves with tons and tons of very, very high-grade steel plate.
While considering options for the disposal of the metal removed from the exterior, the battleship's development director, Terry DeMeo, seized on a unique idea and placed a call to Bladesmith Steve Watkins.
I got a call from him, basically. And I've been in print, Charlotte Observer, and different things. And so if you start searching knife makers in North Carolina, my name's going to come up. And I think that's how it started. And it started with a phone call, and they're like, hey, we have this idea. And then we just got on the same page really fast.
Watkins began his bladesmithing career as an extension of his work as a horse trainer and farrier, making horseshoes for the animals he was charged with training.
I've always loved the way metal and wood come together in guns, in knives, in tools. I think that was passed down to me from my dad. When he was in high school, he worked in a gun shop, and so when I was growing up, he would take me to the gun shows, and he would show me all the historical guns and explain them to me, and that was something that we enjoyed together. And then part of growing up there, we had horses and cattle and farms, and that got me into training horses, and training horses got me into shoeing horses, and shoeing horses got me into blacksmithing and ornamental ironwork and making knives. And probably the very first knife I ever made, I made out of a coil spring when I was 21, 22 years old. I had a blacksmith friend show me how to make it, and I thought it was the most magical thing that I'd ever done, right? Just take this boring, round hunk of steel and then end up with something that's functional that you can use and that's cool, that's cool looking, cool to look at.
Once it was removed, Watkins was provided a portion of the steel, as well as teak wood from the deck, and then set about his mission, crafting a limited edition series of knives and oyster shuckers that would then be sold to support battleship restorations. The results are stunning. Simple but elegant oyster shuckers that are created with a forged finish and a reimagination of the classic military-issue knife, the K-bar, complete with teak scales for the handle. Watkins was delighted with the idea of honoring the ship and its crew by utilizing materials that might have ended up in the scrapyard.
We've got this. We're not sure what to do with it, but if we sell it for scrap, it's worth pennies. It's more important than that, right? I mean, the most decorated battleship of World War II, right? It's been in existence since 1938. It's hard to just take that to the dump and recycle it, right? I mean, thousands of people, thousands of footsteps, you know, thousands and thousands of miles through the sea. To me, it's important and it's special, and I want to honor that, and I want to make an heirloom that honors that you can pass down to your great-great-grandkids and tell the story. And they can hold that in their hand, and they can hold a piece of history in their hand, and they can actually touch it, and you can see where that ship starts and stops. And that's just cool for me. It's and it's an important thing, I believe.
Most blacksmiths take advantage of modern technology in their craft, utilizing power hammers, presses, and powerful grinders and sanders to complete their work in an efficient manner. And even though modern tools can make the process easier and quicker, the technology has actually changed very little over the centuries.
There are weapons in the Weapons Museum in New York. They're 1,000 years old. I'm making these a little better than that, but not vastly better, okay? So the whole idea behind this, my epoxies are a little better than their epoxies. I'm able to impregnate wood with polymers and things like that so it doesn't shrink and expand. But they were using rosewood. Rosewood's naturally stabilized, it doesn't shrink and expand. Or they were using Coca-Cola. You gotta get it hot, you gotta hit it with a hammer, and you gotta make it look like a knife. And we're just trying to preserve those traditions and use the best materials that we can right now.
Watkins took a unique approach toward creating these one-of-a-kind pieces. And while his vision worked with the material, there were some challenges to overcome.
The run of oyster shuckers I made, we did what's called a forge finish, which means once you get through hitting it with a hammer, you leave it alone. You clean it and leave it alone, so all that texture's still there. When I receive the steel, it's got pits from rust and years. I mean, the ship was built in 1938, so you've got almost 100 years worth of wear on that steel. I leave all that in there. I mean, we pound it down, so you gotta divot a quarter of an inch deep, and then you mash that down. Maybe it's only, you know, very thin, but it still has that texture. And so we can leave that in there, but you can also grind that out. So the water and the wear did not change the chemistry. You can keep that character in there by leaving those pits in. There are alloys in that steel that were specifically put there for corrosion resistant, to withstand torpedo hits and things like that, and it makes it different than any other steel out here. What I try to do is bring those elements out where you can see it. It's called alloy banding, when you heat it up and these alloys migrate together, and then there's a way that I can etch it and make all these swirls and all those alloys come out. Try to take that steel, figure out what it wants to be, and then help it be that.
The knives and oyster shuckers will be available for purchase through the Battleship's online store. They are beautiful, functional works of art. In addition, artisans from Wilmington's Edwards Crane Company have been creating other unique Battleship steel keepsake collectibles. All of these handcrafted pieces honor the sacrifices of the men who strode the battleship's decks to defend our nation.
That's a great thing. I mean, there are people who grew up with the Battleship North Carolina as part of their memories, their child memory experiences, and now they can buy a piece of it as a memento, a gift, a recognition to our veteran or a family member who have a affinity for the Second World War or the battleship or the state, whatever. So we have a demand. Now we're trying to continue with translating a great idea for the state of North Carolina.